Okay, my name is officially it's Arthur Broady. That's Broady. Often mispronounced as Brody, and Brody. But everyone back east refers to me as Scrapper Broady. I was fortunate to have the opportunity to play in a benefit game, football game that summer. It was Virginia All-Stars versus West Virginia All-Stars, and the coach of the Virginia All-Stars was no one other than Coach Ramsey. And during the 2 weeks of preparation for this game, Coach Ramsey apparently took an interest in me and invited me to consider Emory Henry College as my place to go get an education. Frankly, I was on the road to joining the military. That was the thing to do in those days, especially if you were a black kid. And most of my friends who did not go to college ended up in the military. So I ended up very fortunately enrolled at Emory Henry College, enrolled in 1966. After college, I went to Prince George's County, Maryland. I had my degree, achieved my degree in English and in elementary education. And so I went to Prince George's County, Maryland, and I taught school there for about 6 months. And then I was drafted into the military. I ended up in the United States Air Force. I spent my 3 years, 8 months, 11 days, 14 hours, and 23 minutes in the military, and ended up in being discharged in Anchorage, Alaska. There I worked for a company associated with the Alaska Pipeline. I worked for the mayor of Anchorage, and then I relocated to Washington State. And here in Washington State, I've lived now for 40 plus years. I have been involved with the college as a board of trustee member. So I'm very closely connected to Monica Hoyle. So I've kept my connection with the college. And I'll be blunt, I'll tell you why, because I think my life would have been significantly different. Had it not been for Coach Ramsey, had it not been the college who opened their arms to me. 1966, allowed me to become part of the football team. All of that, in hindsight, was life-changing for me. It's made all the difference in my life, the quality of my life. And as I tell people as often as I can, I've made it my commitment to pay the college back, but I can't seem to make that go away. The more I do, the more I owe the college in terms of what it's given me. I think Coach Ramsey had an awareness of me, of the kids in Southwest Virginia, the football players, and I think he may have had something to do with my being selected on this All-Star game. And I think they gave him the first chance to see me in pads, seeing what my skills were. And after the first week of the 2-week period, I think he felt comfortable enough to return to Emory Henry and start talking to the administration because it would have been a significant change at the college at that point. There are reports that he returned back to college and held meetings with Fred Self. I think you know that name. Fred was I think a junior at that time, a sophomore or junior, and was a fairly significant member of that team. And I think he assembled a few of those guys, including Fred, and introduced to them the idea of bringing a black football player on board and what would the receptivity be among the players if that happened. And the reports that I am aware of said, Fred said, let's do it. Let's go for it. I'm often asked, Ty, what was it like to be the first black football player there, what kind of racial issues did you encounter? And I think my response is always a surprise or shocking response. You got to remember that part of my story is that I played Little League football in Marion, and that when I came back to Marion my senior year and played again, I was very well acquainted with a lot of the football players at Emory Henry College because I had played Little League football with them. I played with Larry Bells and Chihowie players and Patrick Henry players, and I was familiar with them and they were familiar with me. When I came to Emory Henry College, I had an established group of friends who knew me, and I had known them, and some of them I'd known for 6 or 8 years. We knew one another, and so I had a built-in community of folks that I thought respected me, I thought accepted me, and of course my time on campus was usually around athletes, and so I did not have the experience of showing up there without a built-in group of friends waiting for me. I can't imagine what it'd be to be a black player and show up there, especially in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, without knowing anyone, without having that kind of relationship. Not only the relationship with the college, but remember, I had relationships with coaches that were there along my way, watching over me, helping, guiding me, and maybe even preparing me to go to Emory Henry. I don't know, but that's why my experience was so unique, is that I was fortunate to go there having people, when I walked there that very first day, said, "Hi, Scrapper, good to see you, glad you're here," instead of a group of people looking at me saying, I don't want him here, I'm not ready for this, or whatever the thoughts may be. I had a welcoming committee when I showed up, and they were there every year till I left. Most of our teams that we played in the 60s, 1966 through the next 4 years, were, once again, Tennessee, North Carolina teams, not Virginia teams. Hampton-Sydney was the only Virginia team we played. We played teams outside of our state. Several of them were in North Carolina. It was not uncommon for us to go to North Carolina to a college that did not have any black players yet. I would be the only black player on the field. We would go through the food line, and behind the food line were nothing but black service workers, food service workers. And they would look at me and say, "You got to be kidding. You're on this football team." And say, yeah. Especially my freshman year, it was shocking to them to see this little school from Virginia showing up with a black football player. It turned out over those 4 years that at halftime in those schools, the black employees would come out and stand in the end zone in their crisp white jackets. And if I stepped on the field, there would be this roar, this noticeable. I mean, you have to be able to picture this in a stadium. Let's just take our stadium at Emory Henry, to look up in the end zone and see a sea of white coats from the cafeteria. And every time one player stepped on the field, the player touches the ball, the player makes an interception, there was a roar you could hear from one end of that stadium to the next. I will never forget that. I didn't understand that I was playing for maybe a lot of teams other than just Emory Henry College.